When it comes to Kuma in the story of One Piece, he's always been sort of an enigma. Initially, he was introduced as a heartless pirate, member of the warlords who at the time were near the pinnacle of pirate power and a man with the epithet of tyrant. His introduction on Thriller Bark was nothing short of devastating. He showed up and immediately made Crone disappear. She wasn't the strongest, but we know she had a troublesome ability and he dismissed her immediately. At the time, we didn't know what he was doing when he made people disappear, but we just knew it wasn't good. Then he goes and treats Moria like the shithead he is. To put that in perspective, Moria was the main villain of the arc, and Kuma could just care less. Next, he takes to picking off the Straw Hats who were already battered from their absolute war with the oars, which all culminates in the infamous nothing happened moment. From there, he just becomes more confusing, as he showed mercy on Thriller Bark, but now here on Sabaody, he beats the shit out of the Straw Hats and then sends them flying, seemingly destroying the crew. Then he has the balls to guard the Sunny for 2 years and then goes off and becomes a slave of the Celestial Dragons until he's eventually freed by the Revolutionary Army. Over the course of all these events, we did not know, and as of the recording of this, we still don't know the full picture on his thoughts behind it all. We do know, however, there is much more to him. Before Kuma's backstory, it was very clear that Oda definitely had something planned for him and that he held some major importance. Besides the fact that he was a slave to the Celestial Dragons, had been a warlord of the sea, and a commander of the Revolutionary Army, we can still not see the full scope of his relevance to the story. We all know that One Piece is a rich story with characters that grow and evolve as the story goes on. We see many characters starting one way with one set of ideals, and as the story goes and they go on adventures, they either change or their conviction in their original beliefs stay stronger. What makes Kuma stand out specifically from a character standpoint is that when we meet him, he's essentially at the end of his character arc and it's pretty much complete. He has had tons of adversity, lost the love of his life, and pretty much reserved to his fate to be turned into a mindless robot by Dr. Vegapunk and become a slave to the Celestial Dragons. He is seemingly at the end of his journey. From the outside looking in, he comes off as more of a dog of the marine and someone who pretty much gave up their humanity for unknown reasons, but of course we all know there was more to it. Over the past 10 or 15 chapters, Kuma has easily become one of the most interesting and heartbreaking characters. And if you really know One Piece, you know that's actually really saying something. We find out that Kuma is the surviving member of an all but extinct race called the Buccaneer tribe, a group of people who were said to have giant's blood within them. We learned from St. J. Garcia that the Buccaneer tribe were hunted down and persecuted for doing something despicable, which more than likely happened during the Void Century. Now, what they actually did could only be really one of two things. Either they sided with Joy Boy and helped him out in some way or fashion, or Joy Boy was a Buccaneer. To me, those are the only two things that really make sense. We know the girls say have a deep-seated hatred for Joy Boy, Nika, and the Forgotten Kingdom, and will go to any length to silence anyone who ever even speaks of the Void Century, literally ordering the execution of Dr. Vegapunk merely for just looking into it, and he's their biggest asset. Imagine what they would do to someone who actually shares the same blood as the man behind it all, Joy Boy. We see a flashback of Kuma being born back in the Sorbet Kingdom, and literally almost immediately after he's born, it's found out by the world government through blood tests. Apparently, they even had spies within the very hospital. This just goes to show that even 800 years after the Void Century, they are still vigilant when it comes to any remaining remnants of the Void Century. From this point on, baby Kuma and his family are taken as slaves to Mary Joa, where essentially Kuma spends the earliest years of his life as a slave. Like a lot of mothers in One Piece, his mother died when he was very young, pretty much leaving him and just his father, Clap. More importantly, this is where young Kuma learned of Sun God Nika and all his stories of dancing, smiling, and saving slaves from his father. It's obvious at this point, but Sun God Nika has become integral to not only the ending of One Piece, but the total message of One Piece and what it's about. It goes hand in hand with the concept of bringing in the new dawn and freeing those of the world who are oppressed. Never thought it would play such a pivotal role in Kuma's backstory though, but in retrospect it does make a lot of sense. Kuma is always seen with the Bible, and it has not been confirmed if Christianity is a thing in the world of One Piece. But we do know that Sun God Nika is a thing, and something that tons of the downtrodden put their faith into, just like in the real world. The story of Nika and just what Nika represents had a profound effect on Kuma. It not only shaped him into the man he is today, but also shaped him and his ideals into what they are. He believed that no one person should be born better or worse than someone else, that everyone deserves a chance at happiness and freedom. I'm willing to bet any amount of money that no one would have guessed that Kuma's backstory would have a tie-in to the event of God Valley 38 years ago. Again, just another nod to just the master that Oda can be. The day of the God Valley incident, we see the celestial dragons holding an annual tournament where they see who can hunt down the most slaves and inhabitants of an island that's not associated with the world government. This incident was not only where Kuma received his devil fruit, which was a prize, but also where he met his best friend Ivankov and love of his life Jenny and mother to Bonnie. We learned that Jenny was actually the one who leaked the info of the celestial dragons being at God Valley across the world, hoping that they would cause a diversion so her and the rest of the slaves could escape. God Valley incident was a major turning point in the story of One Piece, but for Kuma in particular, as this is where he first got his hands on the pawpaw fruit, which at 9 years old, Kuma was able to save 500 people. Ivankov said that Kuma had the hands of liberation. This was something that stuck, as we will see later on in the story. Anytime he planned to send someone somewhere, what would he always ask? Where do you want to go? From there on, Kuma and Jenny lived a relatively peaceful life together on the Sorbet Kingdom, with Kuma using his pawpaw fruit to take the pain away from the elderly people in the village. We learned that when Kuma does this, the pain has to go somewhere or it will simply revert to the original person. We see Kuma doing this one day a week, every weekend, and literally taking the pain upon himself. This just goes to show how deep Kuma's caring is for others, and the fact that he's willing to put himself through hell if it means that the ones he cares about can be happy. He literally is having his own nothing happened moment every weekend, and it hits the exact same as they never knew he was actually absorbing their pain. Even going deeper with the nothing happened moment, when he took out all the pain from Luffy's body, he gave Zoro just a piece of it, just to see if he could handle it. Kuma told him that the chances of survival were very slim, yet he let him get a fraction of the taste just to see, knowing full well if he couldn't handle it, Kuma would have been the one who had to bear it himself. Even then, he was willing to bear the pain of someone else close to him as Luffy is Dragon's son. In his flashback, Kuma and Jenny eventually joined up with the Revolutionary Army. For Kuma, this was a major turning point as now he was able to actually do something when it came to helping out right the wrongs of the One Piece world. Tragedy would strike Kuma again when Jenny was taken hostage by none other than the Celestial Dragon. One in particular who wanted to make Jenny his wife. She was taken to marry Joa, so of course Kuma and the Rev Army, they really had no chance of getting her back. From chapter 1098, we had seen this had an extreme effect on Kuma, who had always been thoughtful and caring, but now had become a lot more cold and reckless. It seemed that every time he had someone good in his life, they would get taken away from him. 2 years later, Jenny contacts the Rev Army, telling them that the Celestial Dragons let her go because she was sick. She tells Kuma that she doesn't want him to see her like this and that this is their final goodbye. Then, of course, in Oda fashion, when Kuma found her, she has already passed away. She seemingly contracted a deadly disease from celestial dragons, and it cost her her life. Again, just when Kuma thought he had her back, she's gone again and in an instant. However, to Kuma's surprise, there's a little baby girl there, Bonnie, who is believed to be the daughter of Jenny and a celestial dragon. Now, we know that Oda is no stranger when it comes to delving deep into the horrors and atrocities that humans can cause to other humans. And as in most backstories, he does not shy away from showing just the darker side of humanity in general. But this felt totally different. Oda went completely dark. Jenny was kidnapped, forced to become a sex slave, and then her and her baby got thrown away like trash when Jenny got sick. Oda is really hammering into our heads just how evil and vile the celestial dragons can be and exactly why they need to get gone. Kuma is left to bear the scars left in the wake of the celestial dragons yet again. Every time it happens, he's left to pick up the pieces and keep moving forward. Now, with Bonnie to raise, he has to do so even more. A few years later, he finds out that Bonnie too has the same disease that claimed her mother. And after many doctors seeing her, he finds out that it's incurable and that absolutely shatters him. At this point in his life, Kuma has helped hundreds if not thousands of people. But every time it comes to the people that he loved most, it seems that he cannot do nothing. And now this time, it's his very daughter next, and this will destroy him. Finally, things begin to make sense why Kuma is the way he is when we see him in the current part of the story. He has given everything to save his daughter, the person he loves the most. It has not been revealed yet in the story, but we can kind of piece together from the tidbits we have so far. Kuma either went to the ones who gave Jenny the disease, the celestial dragons, or through Dragon he was able to get in contact with Dr. Vegapunk and he was able to cure it. Either way, the celestial dragons will not let such a thing happen for free. Not only considering that Bonnie is the child of a celestial dragon, but with Kuma being a member of the Buccaneer tribe, they did tons of experiments on him. And we know that the world government has always wanted an army of giants. What not better than to be able to study a human who was essentially spliced with giant DNA? They then stripped him of his humanity and later used him as a slave and for their amusement. The irony of it all is that Kuma's life essentially began as a slave of the celestial dragons and married Joa, and he struggled and fought his way for freedom. But in the end, he would willingly return and become a slave to the celestial dragons and marry Joa and give up his ultimate freedom, his humanity. Kuma is a deeply emotional and heartbreaking character who at his core has only ever wanted to give others what he could seemingly never give himself, and that's freedom. He freed 500 slaves and villagers from God Valley. He freed the old people of Pain in the Sorbet Kingdom. He liberated many people in his time with the Revolutionary Army. He freed the Straw Hats from persecution by the world government on Sabaody, and ultimately he freed his daughter Bonnie from a grim fate handed to her by the celestial dragons. It allowed her to become truly free and travel the world under the sun as she always wanted. Kuma is on his way to Egghead now, and this will be his final stand. I believe he will be there to help liberate the Straw Hats and Bonnie once again. I also will not be surprised if Dragon and Ivankov shows up as well. More importantly, Kuma will get to see Sun God Nika for himself, feeling not only the promise his dad made to him, but the promise he made to Bonnie. He will be truly free knowing that the Sun God Nika is real and that he made the right choice betting on Luffy as the new Don. It's coming.